The houses in astrology basically set up like your entire life, right? So they speak to certain aspects of like you, but they also speak to the whole context that you exist in, right? And today we're talking about the second house. The second house in astrology is all about how you provide for and support the self that you build in the first house, right? So the second house is very commonly associated with earned income, what you do for money, basically. And that's because what you do for money is one of the most key things in our capitalist society that speak to how you might take care of yourself. But they're not a one-for-one, so let's complicate that a little bit. The first house develops a self. The second house then needs to make sure that that self has a sense of security, right? So it's the shelter that you build around yourself. It's how you nourish yourself. The second house can speak a lot to your relationship with food in some instances. How you meet your basic needs, right? And how you care for yourself in more material ways. How you provide a safe place for your physical body, if that makes sense, or provide general material safety, security for your physical body. This can also speak to values and assets and investments. In a broader sense, investments can also live in the 8th house, so we'll talk about that in a little bit different way, but it's how you interpret your personal investments, right? This is speaking a lot to, in the same way that once you have a body, you need to make sure that it's secure, that it has shelter, that it has food, that its basic needs are being met. Once you have a personality, you kind of want to understand what those core values are, what the talents, what the innate gifts are that come along with being the person who you are. All of that falls into the second house. So talents and like personal gifts, not gifts you get from other people, but the gifts that you just have, tend to be in the second house, things you're very good at, right? And then also things that are important to you, things that you really strongly value. You can often find a sense of what matters to you in the second house in like a really broad kind of way, but foundational. Things that matter to who you are, right? The values that make up the person who you are, if that makes some sense. So it can be earned income. It can be how you spend your money. It can be what you possess, what you own, what you surround yourself with in that way. But security, stability, values, providing for yourself, those are much larger concepts. Nourishing yourself is one that I would really focus on with the second house. And those all fall into this category as well. So you don't want to overlook those things. And if you focus too much on the money aspect, you can lose sight of all of the other things that we need to do to care for ourselves, because they all fall into the second house too. And care for like the full being. So talents in the second house is a big one that I feel like people don't always think to include. So like I said, the second house is building on the first house in this way. The first house is the angular house that's setting up the self, right? The second house is the succedent house that's then building on that, right? So you have a self, what do you need to give that self, right? What do you need to give that self to be and to exist safely and to feel okay enough to keep going, basically, because that's what we're going to do with the houses. We're just going to like keep going through life and keep adding themes and keep adding to the complications of life. So we're setting up a lot of foundations here for who you are and for how you, in some ways, how you see yourself, and in some ways just the most basic, intimate ways that you relate to, that you're starting. This house is now starting to relate to the rest of the world and to other people in some ways, right? You're not just a body, you're not just a personality anymore. You're someone who needs to be cared for in a world, in a society, in capitalism, whatever it is, right? That we suddenly are placed in something. The second house gives us some context. Like I said, it's a succedent house. It is dark or non-aspected, right? So it does not have a traditional aspect to the first house, and therefore it is not visible to the self. You might not find that planets and transits to your placements you natally have in your second house, or transits that you experience to your second house, you might not find that they really, that you feel like that they're easily accessible to you. You might not find that they're very upfront and in your face. They might feel like they happen kind of behind the scenes, but they can be very impactful in terms of how you relate yourself to the world, right? Because it's the beginning of that journey. And then you want to look to the ruler of your second house, look to its conditions, its placement, the sign that it's in, the house that it's in, for some more information about how to get deeper in touch with your second house and connect with it. Let me know if you have any questions, and up next is the third house.